Hello, my name is Al Filreis, and I am no longer running for anything. I'm not running for governor. I'm not running for senator. I'm still running for convener, running for host. I'm running for
100 miles a year or something?
1,000, you mean?
Oh, 1,000 miles. I'm sorry.
You were making a pun on running. If you want to make a pun, you should do it into the mic. Running for speaking close to the mic-ism. And greetings to all you folks, some of our TA colleagues, and Erica, whom I'm going to reintroduce in a minute, and anybody who's watching from around the world. Greetings from this room, the Arts Cafe, which is located in the Kelly Writers House, which is located at the University of Pennsylvania, which is located in the greatest city in the world, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and environs. I want to include the suburban environs, the counties around us. From the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the center of the universe momentarily, we greet you for our Week 10 live interactive webcast. So I want to say hi to Sophia, who's all jazzed up, caffeinated by my intro.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk into the mic?
I said yes. So.
I want you to know that Sophia Duros, who is generally a very compliant person, kicked off the boot that she was supposed to be wearing to take care of her foot and is now a non-compliant patient.
If y'all would see the stairs up to my office, you would understand, because they're not big enough for a normal
Can
foot
I just say
anyway.
this is a chicken and egg question? Because
Well,
you probably
I didn't fall
fell
down
the
those
fucking
stairs.
stairs, and now you won't wear a boot that's going to help you go.
It was different
Hello,
stairs.
Sophia. Lainey Brown. Hello, Lainey Brown.
Hi.
I want to say something.
What?
It's Lainey Brown Day.
Uh-oh.
It's Lainey Brown Day.
Happy Lainey Brown Day.
Lainey Brown,
Thanks.
we celebrate you today.
Thanks.
And tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, what do we call it? Eastern Daylight Time, EDT, 6 p.m. You just have to go to the Writers House website, look at the web calendar, and click on the YouTube link, or come here to 3805 Locust Walk in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the great Commonwealth. And Lainey Brown will be reading tonight, and we are so excited, Lainey. Are you excited?
I am excited.
That's great. Amber Rose Johnson,
Hello.
are you running for something?
My life.
You're running to keep up with Al, is what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, okay. Hi.
Hi.
And Jason is here, and Jason has, can we announce this good news, Jason? Are we allowed?
Yeah, sure.
Jason has a book that's coming out. It's going to be published. Yahoo!
Yeah.
Give us a title.
Well, as of now, the working title is Uncanny World.
Oh,
And it's
perfect.
about, it's basically my dissertation that took me 35 years to write. So,
Uncanny, man. Uncanny.
yeah, first place Senate to.
We're very excited.
I had no idea. But it's pretty
great.
cool.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks,
Hi, Jason. And also, we have Gabby, who's in Chicago. Hello, Gabby.
Hello, good morning.
It's getting to be shawl weather in your apartment.
Yeah, and it's getting to be dark at 4 o'clock, so
Yeah, I know.
we're surviving.
That is a bummer. Dave is here from Arizona, the great state of Arizona. Go AZ.
Greetings.
Go AZ. Hi, Dave. Good to see you, as always. Max is here from Berlin, the free city of Berlin, it used to be called back in the Cold War. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. And Allie Castleman is here. Hello, Allie.
Hi, Al.
Hey, good to see you. And drum roll. Do we do drum rolls? Erica Baum. Erica Baum. Erica Baum. An artist, photographer, poet whom we admire so much has decided to stand in front of a giant gong. Either that or a tunnel. What is it you're standing in front of to join us? Hi, Erica. I think you're muted.
Hi.
Hi.
It's a table, and my husband surprised me one day in the middle of the day. He rolled it home. He found it on the street in Midtown, and he taped the side so it wouldn't be damaged and rolled it home.
And so now it's against the wall there.
Sometimes we put it up to eat, but it's really huge. It's like a dim sum banquet table.
Wait a minute. Did he rob a dim sum restaurant for this thing?
He just saw it on the street and he rolled it home.
Erica, were your ears ringing yesterday by any chance?
Oh.
Were they burning, maybe? Because we,
Yes.
in our class, our ModPo class, we were talking about your work, and I think tomorrow we're going to be spending quite a bit of time talking about it, and we admire it so much, and we admire you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm in awe of all of you, and that's no exaggeration. I really, really mean that.
Well, I'm so glad. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. Okay, so Divya Victor will be reading tomorrow here at the Writers' House at 6 p.m., and I announced that. I'll announce that again to the whole ModPo community. You'll want to watch that. So we have 2 nights in a row of great poetry readings. And the last announcement before we get started on today's conversation is that Monday at noon, this is always what we do, after week 10, we convene the next day, which is Monday, and at noon Eastern Daylight Time, we will have our Final Words webcast. And the Final Words webcast is simply this. There's no agenda. There's simply this. We just turn to everyone, people calling in on the phone, people posting to Twitter, people just chatting in the YouTube chat thing, whatever we call it, in the forums, saying hello, saying goodbye, and offering final thoughts on this year, this 10-week session of ModPo, or for that matter, ModPo in general, or for that matter, what the community of ModPo, aside from the poetry, means to you. We look to everyone and anyone to give us your final words. And of course, one of the highlights of that will be the TAs will each get a shot at their final words. So that's Monday at noon. All right. So we have a phone number, 610-616-3208, and it was a little hinky an hour ago, but it seems to be fixed now. And Chris is waiting by the phone for you to call, 610-616-3208. All right. What we're going to do is go around, everybody. This is lightning round. Just toss out your favorite piece, poem, project from week 10 of ModPo. So we're going to start with Sophia, with Lainey on deck.
Okay. Mine is Skywritings.
Nasser Hussain. Mm-hmm. Quickly, why?
Because I appreciate thinking about the impossible trips and barriers for mobility and all these things in the wake of the pandemic is also very interesting.
Mm. Yeah, and if we do talk more about this, we should consider the sort of the whole large question of postmodernity at airports. Mm-hmm. And that whole thing of being in transit somewhere by air and being limited and constrained by that. There's just so much interesting and also very popular art about it. It's really interesting topic. So Nasser was really working on something. Lainey Brown, followed by Jason. Best favorite thing?
I think I'm going to be the first one, but not the last, to say Erica Baum.
Erica Baum.
Because poetry is everywhere. And your work reminds me of that, even with the story of the table behind you. Because when I first saw your image, I thought, what is this work of art behind Erica? Where is she? Is that a gallery in her house? So just that ability to remind us of the poetry of the card catalog and
dog ear. I'm holding up a really beautiful edition.
I just love it.
Of dog ear. I mean, who would have thought? Take some books, maybe Erica can explain, maybe books that you didn't intend to read or some old books you found somewhere, and then dog ear a page and take a photograph and create an almost but not quite unreadable found poem. And who would have thought that career would have begun, I believe this is correct, looking at blackboards and taking photographs of not only what people wrote last, but because, as I think, was it at Bard College?
It was in graduate school at Yale.
Grad school at Yale, and even better, because there was the underlying chalk writings that hadn't been fully erased that you were also bringing out with your photographs. That was your first project.
Well, it's interesting because at the same time, coinciding with that, I also did a little sort of smaller series of photographs of wooden desktops at Yale where people had inscribed, and they were like, palimpsests over and over again, layers of historic, so-and-so was here type things. And so that coincided with the blackboards, but then I spent more time with the blackboards because there's more, there's more possibilities with that. I think it's because it's so fluid.
I gotta say, and I apologize for the digression and want to turn to Jason next for a favorite piece from the week. But the idea, I'm imagining a narrative where you're in school, you're thinking, I'm in fucking school still after all these years. I'm sitting in Yale in New Haven, and presumably the desks were like these old Yale desks that they hadn't replaced. I'm just imagining a whole narrative where you're like, how can I make art out of this total boredom with educational institutions? I know, desk carvings and blackboards is a fantastic digression from the usual in education.
Yes, in a way, and no in a way, but I can elaborate after everyone takes their turn. So
here's a question: will you allow us to have a party at your house where we can inscribe our initials into that table behind you? Okay, thank you. Jason's up for a favorite item, followed by Dave.
Yeah, I was going to pick Erica's dog ears also, but since I was just taken, also I had the amazing.
This is your way of getting two, right?
Erica read the dog ears, to which they were quite legible, but I will go with Tracy Morris, all of her voice works.
Yeah, good suggestion. I'm going to play 20 seconds of Chain Gang. Chris, are you ready?
Yes. That's the sound of the man working on the...
I'm going to skip forward.
Tick tock, working at working at the that's a sound working on the semantic sound of the man working on the same sound, same same block, same sound, same. Isn't that sitting on the same same sound, same sound, same man, same sound, same sound.
I'm feeling a ton of energy from the person sitting to my left. Did you want to add a word?
Every time I hear Tracy Morris perform, I'm amazed at how much she just gives over to the sound. Like, at no point does it feel like she's anticipating what's about to come out. She's in a totally fluid place where the text that she's working with, whatever the original text is, she's opened herself up to the musicality, like embedded within that text, and it flows in just such an incredible way.
It's super hard to do. There's a point where sound of the man, we've got that, and then we've got a tick-tock happening, and the sound of the man tick-tock becomes several times the word semantics. And, that just happened. But of course, that is a meta-poetic moment. It's just, oh my God. So this I want to turn to Dave next with Gabby on deck. This just suggests something really fundamental to week 10, which is, on one hand, you can do this too. You can really do this, right? Or even week 9, you can do this too. On the other hand, virtuosity. Because Tracy's almost the only person we know who can do what she does. Or Christian Buck making the, using the same vowel in words and having it make sense and spending years trying to make that work. You have to really do a high wire act to pull off that kind of thing. So it's this combination of those two things. Dave, your favorite, followed by Gabby?
like Pledge, and not just the Mike McGee one, but I want to focus on the Leanne Brown one, and also the discussion at ModPo Plus between you, Al, and Lainey Brown, and Leanne Brown, which I thought was great. And I like this for a couple reasons. One is because it's not just a take on the Pledge of Allegiance, but also the Brownie Pledge.
Yes, that's right. Doesn't Leanne do the Brownie Pledge? That's right. It was
which I think is especially appropriate by Leanne Brown, and in discussion with Lainey Brown. But also,
too many
I just
browns.
love
brownies, brown. I get it.
The concept of pledges of allegiance to a country that claims to be so individualist is kind of a hilarious thing. It always reminds me of the Monty Python movie Life of Brian, when he's screaming to the mob, "You must think for yourselves," and they all answer in unison, "Yes, we must all think for ourselves."
So, love it. Love that. My friends here are incapable of finding this.
It's right here, Albert.
Okay, would you?
No one's incapable.
Okay. Only one of us is incapable. Amber, we do have a database, by the way. You could have gone to that right now. But okay. Ambrose, would you just read a stanza from Leanne Brown's Pledge?
The first stanza?
Yeah, whatever you like.
I pledge allergy to the flail of the United States of Amigo, and to the reputation for which it stands, one national park, under Godmother, indivisible, with lice and kebab for allegiance.
Love it. Lice got replaced the same way it did with Rosemary Waldrop in the Declaration of Independence. And under Godmother? Or is it grandmother?
Godmother.
Oh, Godmother. Holy cow. Thank you. Gabby, followed by Max.
Sure, yeah. My choice is going to be Carolyn Bergvall's Via, which is a poem I love. And if I may make a somewhat selfish plug, I just this morning published an essay with Jacket 2 that features a section on Via. So I'm sort of in its camp at the moment.
Gabby, your critical writing is so lucid and good. We should
Thank
all go find that at Jacket 2. And Sophia's making a note. Yes, we should. Here's, Chris, 15 seconds or 30 of the great Caroline.
Along the journey of our life, halfway, I found myself again in a dark wood, wherein the straight road no longer lay. Dale, 1996. At the midpoint in the journey of our life, I found myself astray in a dark wood, for the straight path had vanished. Creef and Hollander, 1989.
Gabby, say a word. Anything.
For me, this is just like a poem where loss is an environment, and you kind of really sit in it, and you stay in that environment of loss. And there's something sort of pleasurable at the same time as it is deeply anxious.
Do you think there's a relationship between being lost, and loss, suffering loss?
Oh, yeah.
I figured
but
there
I can't say more without you pushing into my, clicking on the link into my essay. I'm kidding,
oh,
but
did I
did
I guess a topic? Yeah. I mean, I think it's really,
yeah.
say a word or two about that. That's such an interesting thing.
Well,
and Caroline is interested in both topics.
Yeah, for me, I mean, a loss is nothing more or less than a change in the relationship between some subject and some object. And that object can be as small as a pen, as large as a father, or it can be like a loss of your orientation to yourself or to where you are. And I think this poem likes its lostness in a way as much as it's sort of distinctly terrifying in a weird way.
Thank you so much. Max, followed by Amber Rose. Favorite?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out a classic, Christian books, Eunoia, which in part because I had a great conversation about it during my office hour on Monday, and also because I think it really it goes a long way in sort of summarizing the account of contemporary poetry or experimental poetry that we want to give in this week.
Thank you, Max. Thanks so much. As we turn to Amber Rose, I wonder if the guys in the back of the room have a portable mic for Emma and or Daphne and or Rosie, who just entered the room. So, all right, Amber Rose, and then followed by Emma Wenberg, if she's willing. Favorite thing.
So Jason already gave a shout out to all of Tracy Morrison's work, and we heard a little bit of Chain Gang, but I'm gonna give a plug for African. And I wanted to talk about that too, because a little differently than, do you want to play a little bit?
Yeah, should I play a few seconds and then you can comment?
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, are you ready? I'm going to move into it because it's a big, long intro.
As slaves started when we were brought here as slaves from Africa. It all started when we were brought here as slaves from Africa. It all started when we were brought here as slaves from Africa. It all started when we were brought when we were brought here as slaves from Africa. It all said when we were Africa. It all started with Africa. It all started with Africa. It all started when we were Africa. It all started when we were Africa. It all started when we were brought here as in Africa. It all started when we were brought here as from Africa. It all started when we were Africa. It all started when we were Africa. It all started when we were Africa. It all started when we. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're hearing, there are so many things that are coming out of the sound and so many connections. So you talked about one that happened in Chain Gang. Just in that piece that we heard, I heard Slavs come, I heard Islam come, I heard rearrangements of it all started in Africa when we were Africa. There are all of these different arrangements. And I think what I like the most about that poem is that because it all started is marking both a time and a place when that's put into this vicious repetition and reworking and breaking down. She's talking about time, she's talking about language, she's talking about who we are, she's talking about history, she's talking about all of these things at once, and it's all kind of embedded in this time warp that she's doing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, poetry music or music can do things that other forms of communication don't or can't. I mean, this just proves it again. Because it has all those disciplinary interests, categorical interests. It gets you to think, creates astonishment, does history. I mean, you know, it's really great. Thank you, Amber Rose. Emma W., followed by Erica Baum.
Yeah, I was also going to say African. And just to expand on that point, like, I'm just so in awe of how it, like, refuses this linearity of narrative by offering us this like, introduction and then not letting us leave. Like, it all started, and then we just have to keep sitting it, and it's saying, like, it's not letting us, like, get past that. And I think that there's a tie there to Via in how it's, like, offering us this first few lines of Dante's Inferno, and then we just are getting lost in that introduction.
So once again, loss and lost. Great, thank you. Erica Baum, followed by Allie. Favorite thing, Erica?
I'm going to mention Jordan Abel's A Place of Scraps.
Great.
I listened to the conversation that Al had with Amaranth Borsa, and I really appreciated the introduction to the work and the way in which this is a sort of conceptual process where they're mining, carving. It's an erasure work, but it also is. I studied anthropology in college, so the subject matter is really meaningful to me. And that's an interesting, there are many layers to this project, and I just think it's fascinating.
Great suggestion. Can I ask you a question about your own work and your own interests in relation to erasure? Because their erasure is very political and anthropological and very Canadian. You're interested in erasure. I mean, we were just talking about your Blackboards project. You're interested in erasure, and it gets to social and socio-political stuff too. So tell us about your interest in erasure, please. And I guess also technologically, the card catalog is a great example of a technological erasure, because you're trying to preserve something that is a mechanism that is gone.
Yeah. I mean, that could be applied to lots of different projects. With the Blackboards, just to start with the erasers, I was interested in the way in which we're not able to get at the meaning that was intended, but then we make our own meanings, and that was what was so exciting to me. So it was erasure, and it was someone else's erasure, and the way in which that gave us the feeling of the presence of the lecturer, simply in the residue of their motion of trying to erase the words, but then the words that came through anyway. And there's many aspects of erasure in there. And then I would say with the dog ears, there's erasure in the sense that there are things we know we're not seeing. And in that case, it's me doing the quote unquote erasing, although I hadn't really thought of it as an erasure project, but I can put it in those terms. And then with the card catalog, that was something where when I started the project, I really wasn't thinking of it as something obsolete. At the time, it was a quotidian way that we accessed books, and it was how books were organized in libraries, and it was your resource for it. But while I started doing the work, it was becoming obsolete, and they were deaccessioning the card catalogs, and they were converting to online databases. And so I kind of had to embrace the documentary quality and aspect of it. And that's become kind of an ongoing thing in my work, which is that things I look at tend to become obsolete. And so there's an erasure over time, but at the same time, photography kind of captures time. And so you have that relationship.
We have to think about the cause and effect relationship between these things. Every project, every fact of life that Erica Baum photographs then disappears.
Exactly. It's a lot of power I have there.
Would you do us a favor as we turn to Allie, and then we're going to talk about a couple of other poets. Would you do us a favor and grab, I assume you have a copy of Dog Ear somewhere. Would you
Sure.
Would you grab it in the next few minutes? No rush. Grab it and then pick one. And I think the Zoom is now clear enough so that you could actually hold up the visual concreteness of it and we can see it. I think Paul Burke can. I know you can't manipulate her camera, but anyway, we'll look at it together and then you'll read it. It'll be very interesting to try to think about hearing the reading of a dog-eared page. So thank you in advance for that. All right, Allie Castleman, and then I want to play a Lainey Brown sonnet. Surprise. And talk about it. Okay, Allie. Hello, Allie.
Hello.
You're just rocking the purity of the white room and the white sweater, and
I'm just trying to soak up as much light as I can as we plunge into early darkness.
It looks like you're a character in Severance, that TV series.
I haven't watched it, but
okay,
I want to.
It's really grim.
I've been thinking, as Erica's been talking about, like blackboards and palimpsests on desks, about just like writing on kind of in bar bathrooms and how like rich of a space that is for this week. But on another note, I'm really enjoying some of Fred Wa's work this week. Particularly Selves and Between You and Me There Is an I.
Do you have Between You and Me There Is an I in front of you? Could you just read, I don't know, half of it? It's very short.
Between you and me there is an I. Between two stools the hyphen lies, the eggs in the nest, the blind in the fold, the hinge of the city, the door and the jam, the map and its edges, the wars I've not fought, the life and its lease, the rope but which end, the brink and disaster, the bank and the laughter. And it keeps going.
What's he doing with that? It's not quite a perfect list of binaries, but the binaries are problematic because they're not all binaristic.
Well, yeah, and what I really what I appreciate about it is the way in which it actually defamiliarizes extremely common pairings or cliches, to the point where as a reader I have to be like, wait, like I'm forced to think about the sense of the use of that cliche. And it's just, so he's like reinvigorating just kind of common or overused language, by kind of like separating those things, or like making us look at them kind of on their own terms in a way.
And that's where the I is located, between you and me. So between one element of the binary and the other element of the binary, the subject, the object, there is the real subject, which is the me, that is the poet, that is trying to figure out whether the binarism hurts or helps. You know, it's a lovely idea that the I is in the middle of a you and a me. That's great. Thank you, Allie. I want to play a very short sonnet. You'll see why, because it's not 14 lines in a minute, by Lainey Brown, because this is Lainey Brown Day. Yay. I've been waiting for this day, Lainey Brown Day. It's in my calendar. It says Lainey Brown Day. And my watch, my Apple Watch, not to plug a product or anything. Amber is looking at me like, you've never done that before. And Starbucks, Apple, Starbucks, I don't know what's wrong with me.
You had Starbucks, that's what's wrong.
It's
Definitely decaf.
Who knows?
Skim
But
milk and decaf.
anyway, this morning, the first thing I looked at my watch, it said, Lainey Brown Day. You know, it's like, okay, I'm getting up. Before we do that, I want people to check what's happening with our co-conversants out there. Sophia, can you look at Twitter? Dave, look at the forum. And maybe, I don't know, Max, are you looking at the YouTube? Are you able to see the YouTube chat stuff? And Allie, you too? Could you do that? Okay, great. So Max, Allie. First, Sophia, anything happening on Twitter?
We just have some love for Jason's book
Yay,
coming
Jason.
out. People are very happy for you and congratulatory. And then we have Colleen saying there is musicality in all poetry after listening
Colleen
to
Knight. Yes.
Tracy.
Fantastic. Dave, anything in the forum thread?
Yeah, there's a comment by Denny about the week's material. Said chapter has loads of fun and engaging work and too much of it to acknowledge it all. Many pieces use procedures and rules with surprising, compelling, and humorous results. The use of such procedures and constraints is also entirely a choice and not in the least a necessary one for engaging with poesis.
Thank you, Denny. Denny is such a great ModPo citizen. And Denny witnessed, I don't know, 4 or 5 of these videos being made, a couple in Seattle and then a couple in Vancouver. He sort of traveled up the coast with us. That was really fun. And YouTube chat, Max first and then Allie.
Lots of enthusiasm for all the poems we shouted out. We have Kim Coveney saying, I love Amber Rose reading. There's him again saying, yes, Gabby, in reference to Gabby's recommendation. There's a lot of love for Via.
Mm-hmm. Great. Can you name some names of people who are there doing the talking?
Sure, of course. Yeah, Miranda Jubb, Hannah Linden.
I heard a rumor those two are going to meet up somewhere. ModPo meetup.
They did.
They did already. Yeah,
Yes.
great. That's great.
Sophia Naz.
Sophia Naz, it's early. Good morning.
Few other folks. You see anybody else in there, Allie?
Allie, let's turn to you.
Yeah, no, there's a big crew. We're getting a lot of, I feel like everyone who, like, yay, Lainey Brown Day. And then when we shouted out Denny, Leah J said, yay, Denny, he's so prolific. So it's just, you know.
Everybody likes each other,
We're
basically.
like tumbling on our own energy.
I love that. Way to describe it. It's Lainey Brown Day today, and there's a 6 p.m. reading, 6 p.m. on this day, 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Okay, so you wrote a book called Daily Sonnets. There are 4 sonnets in Modpo Plus, and I picked one called 2/14 Sonnet. Now, Sophia, what could a 2/14 sonnet be? Without knowing anything about it, what would you think?
This sounds like math. 2
Doesn't have
14,
to be math. How many lines are in a typical sonnet?
14.
How many lines does this poem have?
I don't know.
2.
2.
This is
There
a
you go.
2/14 sonnet.
Well, I assumed it would be 2/14, like 2 of 14 lines. Like
Yeah,
what?
2/14. Yeah.
No, that I was thinking.
You
of
don't have to think it's
multiplying
1/7 because that doesn't help in
No,
sonnet
I was
world.
thinking 2 14-line
Double
things.
sonnet.
Yeah.
Uh,
Double sonnet.
I want to throw this out to Gabby and Erica. If you know nothing else about Lainey's project or about Lainey's affiliation with the kind of poets that we've been reading in this week, just loose and also tight affiliation with them, if you knew nothing else, but somebody told you there's a sonnet sequence, daily sonnets, and one of them that you were about to look at and you were about to hear it, it was only 2 lines. Erica, Gabby, what would you say? What would be your instinct as an experimental poetry fan? What would be your first thought, Erica Baum?
I would say that she knows the other lines, but she's not telling us they're erased.
That's cool. Back to erasure. Do it. Let's keep riffing. What's another possibility? We'll go to Gabby and then back to Erica. We're doing lightning round possibilities. What else might you think?
As a person who's tried daily writing, I would say ran out of time.
Ran out of time. Back to you, Erica. What else might it be?
Something interfered. She was in the middle of it and something interrupted her.
And then informed by New York School and language and aleatory people saying, it's okay, just do the 2. Just do the 2. You don't have to wait till the other 12. Sophia's laughing at me. The other 12 appear. Okay, back to you, Gabby. What is another possibility?
This is going to be maybe more intellectual, but the last 2 lines of a traditional sonnet are like typically the best lines or the kind of most important. And I would say maybe this is like just giving you the end, basically.
Yeah, going right to the end. Okay, good. Lainey, I'm going to play it and then just ask you to comment on it and on the project and how it relates to week 10. That you would possibly publish a sonnet consisting of just 2 lines and calling it 2/14 sonnet. How radical is that? Here we go. This is Lainey Brown. Catch it fast. This is Lainey in I don't know, was it before 2011? Yes, it was. It was no, it wasn't. It was recorded in 2009. But it feels
written,
old.
I feel like it was written in 2001, 2002, like soon after 9/11.
Okay, so there might be, anyway, there's also the reading voice is so different from the current Lainey Brown reading voice, I think. Yes, here we go.
2/14 sonnet. This undressing at security checkpoints would never have gone over with the Victorians.
Here it is again.
2/14 sonnet. This undressing at security checkpoints would never have gone over with the Victorians.
I would like to hear from Lainey about this, and then I want to ask Sophia and Max to comment as well.
Well, I love Gabby and Erica's thoughts on the form, and I'll just add one more thing that relates to this whole book, is that in all my books is that I'm really interested in the elasticity of poetic form and the reinvention of poetic form. So inspired by poets like Bernadette Mayer's sonnets and Ted Berrigan's sonnets, and there's a lot more than that, but those are the first ones. A lot of my books are an attempt to write through a particular poetic form right now, and I'm really excited by poets who are pushing the boundaries of what is a form. Like, for instance, in Bernadette Mayer's book, The Desires of Mothers to Please Others in Letters, that book has plays, it has everything. I mean, it has every form in it. So how much can you push a form and still call it that? And my work on the poet's novel is similar. Like, can you call a Lydia Davis 2-line sentence a novel? Why not? So these questions are really important to me.
Love that. Thank you. Max and Sophia, want to add a thought to this?
Yeah, sure. I think I immediately thought about, the constraint of a traditional sonnet and how it has to have the turn and the rhyme scheme and whatnot. And this version of a sonnet is constrained in a different way, being that it's only 2 lines. And it makes me think about the constraint of the content, like the security checkpoints, and how you're not allowed to leave a line until you've completed the line. And you can't get out of these Victorian clothes because there's too much to do. And so I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition between like all these different ideas of constraint, because really you took the liberty and freedom to pare a sonnet down, but is it more constrained because it has less lines? I don't know.
Love that. Gabby, I'm sure you had it was Max, I'm sorry. Max, I'm sure you had something brilliant you wanted to say that was not prompted, but I also want to add a prompt to whatever you were going to say anyway. And the prompt would be, if I asked you or required you to read this, that is to close read it as a 9/11 poem or a post 9/11 poem, not just the content, but also the form, what would you do?
That is a trickier prompt than than what I was expecting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll play it again, and then maybe that'll help. Hold on.
214th sonnet. This undressing at security checkpoints would never have gone over with the Victorians.
You know what, Max? Say what you were going to say, and I bet
you'll get
to 9/11.
I'll work into the 9/11 analysis.
Okay.
Hopefully,
Gabby's enjoying this. It's like some kind of doctoral exam or something. Deer in headlights. One time at Johns Hopkins, there was an ancient. I'm going to say jerk because he's probably long gone and he's not watching this webcast. Arnold Stein, who his dissertation student came in, dissertation defense, and he leaned over the table, it's very famous, and said, "Melancholy," which meant that the dissertation student had then to just talk about melancholy. He hadn't written about melancholy. Anyway, sorry, my prompt was not nearly as mean-spirited as that. Yeah, that's a true story. The old days of dissertation. Yes. Did I buy you some time, Max?
Yeah, you did. I appreciate it. Oh, that was great. No, I just wanted to praise you, Lainey, for this extremely inspired, in all of these selections, arithmetic approach to the sonnet and to form, and this way of basically posing what is actually a very old metaphysical question about form, a metaphysical question, but posing it about form, and that is, how much of something constitutes something in essence, right? Like if half of a table is still a table, right? 2/14 of a sonnet, why can't that still be a sonnet? If it's just the volta or the turn or the end. How, who is to say that's not a sonnet? And it's an inspired way of putting into question the rigidity of form, the idea that form exists out there and it's something we have to do to a certain degree of perfection because it's a sort of contained whole. Where that goes with 9/11 formally is something I'll still ponder over. But
okay, good. What you said was fantastic, and you passed the baton. And it turns out that Daphne is holding the baton, otherwise known as a mic. Daphne, your thought on this?
Yeah. So first off, I hear the poem. It's kind of a cranky thought, Like, you go to the airport line and it's like, God damn it, I have to take my shoes off. Like, part of the poem, it's just funny. But I would also hear two lines. First thing I think of is Ezra Pound, and In the Station of the Metro. So I don't know if this is Lainey's intent, but both of those poems are about travel and transit and how to represent that. And, in both of these cases, and again, I don't know Lainey's exact context in writing, but for Pound, we know that In the Station of the Metro was much, much longer and then pared down. And in this case, it was 2 lines to fit form and content, a brief apparition of these faces in the crowd. And for Lainey, you read this, it's this sort of funny, cranky poem, that it's like, can we really give 14 out of 14ths of a sonnet to something like that? Are you kidding me?
Daphne, that is so great. I want to turn to Lainey for a second, so I have a question for Lainey. And then,
I have a 9/11 thought.
And Amber Rose has a 9/11 thought. And then I want to turn back to Erica, who's by now picked out a dog ear. I'd love for you to do that and then read it, and we can kind of collectively do a close reading of that. So thank you, Daphne. Lainey, you're the one who mentioned, in thinking about the dating of this, you mentioned 9/11, I think, yesterday when we talked about it, or anyway, today, certainly. And I keep thinking about, I know daily sonnets pretty well, because I actually wrote an essay about one of those sonnets. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I love the project. And I keep thinking about the Victorian love of sonnets, which was a revived form from the Renaissance in Victorian England and France, but I'm thinking England in particular. So the Victorians loved the sonnet. So there are 2 things that are problematic with the Victorians at the turn of the 21st century, given 9/11 as our opening act. One is this idea that the Victorians would not do well in post-2001, and neither will the sonnet. There's something commensurate about what you're doing to the sonnet. So that's not a question, but I'd love for you to comment on how I did there. And then we'll turn to Amber Rose.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, I was thinking about how intrusive it is, seemingly more so for women at the airport, and more so a woman with an infant and a 2-year-old, and literally you have to take everything off and hold 2 babies and go through the thing, and there's no it just seemed very strange. It was a strange moment, but I feel like the sonnet is alive and well because of the efforts of people like Bernadette Mayer.
Yeah.
And this irreverence and this idea of I'm thinking about what Erica said about the other 12 lines that are I'm not saying. It's like, well, you can imagine it. You just imagine when you go to the airport what happens. And thinking about Daphne's comment, I wasn't thinking about Pound, but I was thinking about compression, because I always admire what I can't do. Mm-hmm. So part of the project with that book was to see, can I be spare? Because I'm so often in the sentence. So I was.
And here's the problem with the Victorians. Yeah. If I may, and everybody is hanging on this because, you've always wanted to hear somebody talk about what's wrong with the Victorians. The problem with the Victorians is that even after coming through airport security, Elizabeth Barrett Browning would write a sonnet. Indignant sonnet, but a sonnet nonetheless. And what's good about you and cool about this moment in our poetry, at least the poetry that we admire, is you're not going to do that because form and content are too inextricably tied as the 21st century arrives. And things like the hassle of daily living, of raising kids, or of taking kids or yourself through the airport, is the sonnet the right form for this moment? No, and that's what you're saying. I like that. Amber Rose?
Yeah, I had a small comment because I thought that question, I think maybe when most of us heard it, it sort of just felt totally out of left field to be like, how do you read this as a post 9/11 poem? And I guess I wanted to say something because I've been talking in my office hours about the tools, like how ModPo gives us tools to answer those kinds of questions about any poem.
Yes.
And so I wanted to just share where my mind went, which was first like, how the hell is this a post 9/11 poem? And then I was like, okay, well, must have some reason. And then I'm like, all right, security checkpoint. Security really changed. I mean, post 9/11, how we dealt with security and airport security totally changed, where it became this hassle and this sort of tug of war between the need for the performance of security, the real need for security, and the like experience of going through all of these changes. And so this scenario, it is funny, and it's something that we can all sort of be like, oh, I can resonate with that feeling because we're in a shared world where
Yes.
security changed after. So
Love
I just wanted
that.
to say something about like how to deal with that kind
And
of
it
question.
all connects, Sophia DeRose. It all connects. And think about, and you brought this up, which is why I'm turning to you. Nasser Hussain does an experiment in form based on the imagined and real limitations of mobility for him because of his name, not because of his Canadian citizenship, but because of his name. And his poem for Walt Whitman is sort of it's a cousin, maybe a distant cousin, but a cousin to Lainey saying, I'm writing about security at 9/11 and how this wouldn't have been good for the Victorians. And I'm going to do it in a broken up sonnet that defies the tradition. So, Sophia, for Walt Whitman, and this is, of course, all in airport codes, and the main one is me, M-E-E, but we don't know what, is that the Malta airport or something? Anyway, it goes, for Walter Whitman, me, bar, ick, yop, me. Sophia DeRose, can you spontaneously do a close reading of that connects us to the conversation we're having about Lainey Brown and 9/11? Go.
Yeah, I can try. I mean, I guess the central tension for this poem written for Walt Whitman is that this is composed of like language adjacent things. Like this isn't actually a word. It's just a word enough. It's like actually a symbol of like this like system of category or that facilitates like the security people that have this power to like use language that isn't language to understand travel and us and category. So I think the central tension would be that you read me over and over again, and it's supposed to be about the speaker and this like declarative joy, but it's not actually the word me, and this word is used for like restriction, or this label is used for restriction or access. They're like differently appointed availabilities of a space. And when you're in a body that isn't given like all of those accesses or abilities, like what you're left with just noise, right?
Yeah, and in terms of the airport, the travel, because Nasser was thinking about applying for a grant to actually make the trips that are traced out in these poems from airport to airport, which would have been a very expensive grant. Mm-hmm. Probably couldn't have done it because he would have been stopped at so many places. But this one, me, riffing on Whitman's egotism, actually has him at the same fucking airport again and again and again and again because it uses me. He can't get out of that airport except for the barbaric yop. Thank you. Erica, I'd love for you to read a dog ear to show us the concreteness of the poem on your screen. Most of us... What's that?
I have a suggestion. I could read it, but why don't you hold it up?
Okay, great. Just give me a page number.
Okay. It's plate number 12 in closing.
Got it. Can we do this? Paul, can you stick it on me even though Erica's talking? Okay, great.
Okay,
See what
that
Paul
way,
can
because
do.
I'm looking down to read. Okay. 104. I'm enclosing here or remain. 105. You can also do now this. I'm turned with you if I, answering no, tiniest yes, though it is last, me.
That's one way of reading it. How many other ways could you read it? Paul, are they still seeing my page? Yep.
Should I do it again?
Yeah, you want to read it a different way?
Sure. I'm enclosing. You can also. I'm turned, answering yes, last. Here or remain. Do now this with you, if I, no, tiniest. So it is me.
Love that. Okay. Are we ready, folks? You're at a disadvantage, everyone, although I can keep holding it up as a text. You're at a disadvantage, you Zoom people, because I'm going to call on you to make a comment. Oh, look at that. Why don't you keep doing that? The problem is that she'll need to keep talking and it won't stay on her, will it? Or can you make it stick? Or do you feel good about my version of it? Okay, we're going to use mine. All right, so Allie, Amber Rose, Dave, and Jason. Comment, any kind of comment, brief ones, any comment on this poem, on what Erica did, on the two readings, on the whole dog ear idea. Would love to hear from you. Allie with Amber Rose on deck.
This is going to sound very vague, because I think I need to stay with the language itself for longer to be more specific. But I love how in both of those readings, at least I'm kind of left, it's different sense that is made, and yet I'm left with a very similar emotional feeling. Which just is so satisfying.
Love that. Thank you. Amber Rose is at a huge disadvantage because she's not able to see the thing I'm holding up. But did you want to speak generally to the project?
Yeah, I want to speak to the project and say that what allows each reading to be new for me is that there's an encounter being staged, and it's a material encounter in that the physical text, the physical pages are sort of kissing each other and meeting each other in a way that allows the language and how the language then functions in that encounter to always be new.
Thank you so much. Dave, followed by Jason, and we'll go back to Erica for a thought on this.
Just I guess a general comment. I just like the way it suggests that the poetry is really in our individual interpretations. The source text of a poem could be anywhere in the world, and the poetry is really, what we bring to the table. So it really leverages that idea that it's interactive and that it's us. The poem itself can almost be incidental to what the poetry is.
Very nice. Jason, and then Erica.
Yeah, I think I've asked you this before, but I think it's interesting to think about how many dog ears you have to make to find a dog ear that you like. But for me, we're publishing a bunch in Fence, and I love the way it's interesting the way the image plays depending on where it is. I like the idea of the image being in a book, a physical book made out of paper that can also be dog-eared. I mean, you could do tear a page out and do an infinite origami and come up with who knows what combination. But this is the most kind of essential move. And the movement from, I mean, I can't help but think about the difference, say, to see this as a photograph, to see this within a book, a printed book, and to see this on a screen. I think they all would have very different effects.
Yes.
And that what makes me the most excited about these is the way it activates tactility. Like I become whichever media I'm looking at the image in, I can't help but become conscious of my body, of my fingers, of the permission that this gives us to just play with words and find things that are already there that no one had found before.
Jason, thank you. And thanks to everybody. Erica, would you add a thought on this particular page or any kind of memory of making it? And then I have I want to quote Jennifer Levin from the forums. We're calling it audible a little bit here. Quote Jennifer Levin on the forums, and she poses a question about Erica that I want to ask almost everybody. So, Erica, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I appreciate everything everybody said. I'm just going to go back to what Allie said, that in a way, I think that, which ties into a question that Jason asked, that I think that there's an emotional tone to some of there's a range, and that they in terms of how I choose them, when Jason asked me, how many do you make, on what basis do you choose them? I think that there's an emotional tone that is part of what helps me discern, and when I say that, I mean to add to a range that I'm sort of collecting, so that it's like a range of emotional tones. But I also think that in terms of I made decisions about how to make this work. I was thinking about, I always saved my place in paperbacks that I read of my own. My father, who was a mechanical engineer, I remember when I was a kid, he died when I was pretty young, but I remember when I was a kid, he told me he always remembered the number of the page he was on. And I always thought about that. Like he would make a point of just, finishing his, pausing the book and remembering page so he could return to it without any marker at all. So it's kind of interesting because I think that this is a very different, strategy. And I think that that's behind it a little bit.
I love that.
Anyway, I don't know. I could just ramble. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, as far as they're ones, I'm excited actually about the ones that are coming out in Fence, because they're ones that are not included in the book. So it'll be fun.
Great. We haven't seen them yet. What a plug. Okay, what I'd like to do next, and then after that we'll do final words. What I'd like to do next is quote from Jennifer Levin's post to the forums this week. When is a work of art a poem, and does it matter? And it's a question about Erica Baum, and make some comparisons that I think are very interesting to other weeks of this course. And I'm going to invite a bunch of people to respond to it. But before we get to that, Twitter, Sophia, what's happening there? Dave, in the forums, if anything, and Max and Allie in YouTube chat. Sorry to spring that on you, Sophia.
It's okay. Not much is happening on Twitter, aside from what I wrote. So.
And that could be generally said of Twitter these days. Not much is happening on Twitter. Dave, anything in the forums?
Nothing new, nope.
Okay. And Max and Allie, what's happening in YouTube?
I can go. Hold on, let me find my notes. So just on this conversation, Sharon had a comment that I think is relevant to what Erica just said. It's also, so talking about the dog ears, it's also what we were always told not to do with books, deforming it in order to make more meaning, violating the book.
Right.
And I think that's such a great comment about the work of this week. And to a certain extent, the work of the past 2 weeks. or 3 even, which is also, it makes me think of just this idea of a Victorian principle, getting back to Lainey's sonnet. That like part of what we're celebrating in this week is this type of like deforming or defiling so that we can kind of put our own claim on something. Like everything is kind of up for grabs in this really generous, inclusive way.
And this certainly goes back to week 9 where Joan Rotalick is getting rid of books that she doesn't really want to keep on her shelf, and so she preserves a kind of viscerum of them by just grabbing some lines. And there's some damage being done because she's put these books out for maybe a library or people on the street to take. Max, is there anything else you want to point out in YouTube?
Yeah, two further comments also on this conversation. One from Lee Mast saying, it makes me think about how we arrange our texts. You need to know what a book is to know what you're looking at, which I actually find remarkably profound, and I thought was a really great observation. And also one from, I just had it. Oh yeah, Leah J saying Erica reading it aloud helped me understand it as a poem rather than a square picture.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Also a very pertinent comment.
When it becomes spoken, it's something else entirely, which is the question that Jennifer Levin is asking. When is a work of art a poem, and does it matter? And so it's a long thing, but what I'm going to pick out a couple points from it, and I'm going to ask Sophia, Lainey, Gabby, Max, and Erica Baum herself to respond in that order. So she makes a connection between Frank O'Hara and Erica Baum as follows. It's the finding of texts in daily life. For example, Frank's having a Coke with you, selecting from what he sees and hears as he walks the streets with his lover to form the raw material for celebrating their relationship in a poem, and likens this to dog ear and card catalog. That's a comparison that Erica's probably not heard lately. I would also compare Erica's work with Jackson McClo's A Vocabulary for Peter Innisfree Moore, in that both are working with artwork as poetry, and in McClo's case with artwork designed as the basis of performance. Is it a poem or a musical score or something else? What Jennifer's saying is that your work, Erica, is like McClo's in basically getting us to ask questions about what kind of category of art it is. While O'Hara is clearly a poet in the traditional sense of writing words on a page, I still want to compare him to Erica Baum, because these works of Baum and McClough and Christian Bach raise more complicated questions, such as, is a photograph really a poem, even when it is a photograph that includes words? And finally, now I don't know the answer to these questions, concludes Jennifer Levin, but all I can say is that all 4 poets, she was referring to 4, but we're talking about O'Hara and McClough in particular, spoke deeply to me and will remain with me a long time. I suppose my only question might be something like, how do we have a common language for conversation, teaching, exhibiting, displaying, etc., if we get rid of the categories of different forms of art? There's a lot of really interesting questions in there. So we're going to start with Sophia, with Lainey on deck. Respond in any way you like, Sophia.
It's like a million good questions. But I'm thinking about, I might have mentioned this once before, but I'm thinking about when Doug Kearney came a few years back here, and someone asked him why he doesn't consider, or didn't at the time, consider his work art, because it's so visual and so aesthetically dynamic. And he said, well, I don't want to put it in a frame and put it on a wall, because then people will look at it and they won't read it. And that really made an impact on me, because it made me consider that a writer is only a writer if they're being read. That interaction between reader and writer is actually what makes it writing. And the actual words are more incidental in that way. It's the interaction and it's the entering of something that makes it writing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lainey, and Gabby is on deck.
I'm thinking about how artistic intent is really important in a lot of conceptual writing. That doesn't mean that the work is always equal to the intent, but when it is, it's just magic. And then there's something that's beyond categories. So I want to say this work, yes, it's a poem. Yes, it's a photograph. Yes, it's visual art. Yes, we can read it. So it's not that there's no categories. It's that there are more categories. And also I feel like this is a question for Erica. This is a new poetic form, ? It's a new poetic form. Is anyone else making dog ear poems? Or if it's a new poetic form, what would you call it, Erica? I'm just curious.
I think we're going to defer that to the moment when Erica can accumulate all these questions. But I have a question for you that's going to be not embarrassing. It's going to be hard to answer with Erica witnessing it.
Okay.
What's your guess as to the intention? This is a person who is a photographer who then discovered an interest in photographing words and then was brought into the poetry community because it just worked so well in that neo-conceptualist moment of the late 90s and early aughts.
I'm going to guess that Erica's going to say yes and not either or, based on her generous presence. And also, even going back to the table that's from the street, I mean, how much more New York school is that?
Oh, wow. At first I thought you were just dodging the question, and then you said something so brilliant at the end of it that you tied her back to the New York school, which is what Jennifer Levin did by comparing it to O'Hara. Holy cow, things are happening. Gabby, followed by Max.
What I want to say is that sometimes a genre distinction is just let me not say just, is nothing more or less than a community alignment, right? So sometimes by saying, oh, this work is in this genre, even if we could kind of argue that it's also in another genre, we're sort of, one of the things that artist is saying is like, this is who I'm talking with, this is who I care about, this is who I'm thinking with. So like, let me give an example, like a really super uber famous text-based artist like Barbara Kruger. I don't think that stuff is poetry, and it's in large part because Barbara Kruger's not responding to poetry. She's responding to magazines, to graphic design, to other visual artists. And that's not to say poetry is nowhere in it, but I just mean there's a real like sense of a lineage of visual art. And so I think sometimes like when we say, this is a poem, it's in part because poetry is this small knit community that cares a lot about reading itself and moving itself forward. And sometimes the formal distinctions actually take a little bit of a backseat to just who you're in community with.
Wow, I like it. It's a social reading of art categories. I think that makes a ton of sense. All right, let's go to Max, followed by Erica Baum.
Yeah, I just want to second everything that Gabby just said, because I think it's on the money in terms of an answer to Jenny's question, and probably the kind of answer that Jenny's looking for. But to also just speculate a little bit, since it's week 10, and to sort of tie back to our earlier threads from our conversation. I think that what we're dealing with here is various forms of overlap, and also, to go back to Lainey's experiment with the sonnet, we're also dealing with fractions. I mean, we're looking at writers, poets, and also other artists who are interested in just pushing the boundaries of how much of something can count as something. How much can a photograph count as a poem? How much can a poem that's photographed count as visual art? And these kinds of experiments. This is the sort of the territory that these folks are working in here in week 10.
Thank you, Max. Erica, you want to respond to any and all?
Sure. There's sort of too much to say. I'm trying to keep track of all the things I want to say, and I probably won't say them all. I would say yes, and like Lainey said, I would say yes, and to the community dialogue that Gabby said. I think that I love the Frank O'Hara thing. I tie that back into photography in general, because street photography, or in the tradition of Walker Evans or other Lee Friedlander and many others, Helen Levitt, you're walking along the street and you're open to whatever you see. What you make a frame that's just almost a chance operation that, it's that moment that you chose, but then the things that are in that frame are the things that you allowed to be there. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of ways in which those things mesh for me. And I think that in terms of poetry and art, I'm thinking maybe it's like a synthesis of those different things I'm enthusiastic about and I'm in dialogue with and that I'm receptive to. And then one last thing is to say that I wrote this in a discussion forum yesterday. I think in response to a question, I think that for me, constraints are liberating and categories are constraining. So I sort of feel like I don't need the categories. I'm happy to be in dialogue with various communities that might take it up, and that it's generative in both directions. And then I think in terms of constraints, they allow you something to push against. So it gives you a freedom to get started. So it's kind of like the Bernadette Mayer type of idea. How do you get started? So that's
so great. And what you said makes me happy, 5X, because it just affirms what we already know, which is that you want to be in dialogue with the poetic community. That's why ModPo has interested you all these years, and it's just such a delight to have you with us. So we're going to do final words, final thoughts, and I'm going to ask Daphne and Rosie optionally to also have a final word. We'll cycle you in. So we're going to start, for any kind of final thought, we're going to start with Sophia, followed by Jason. Sophia, did you get a chance to think of a final thought?
Honestly, my final thought is how excited I am for Lainey Brown Day and the reading tonight.
Oh, Lainey. Thank you. Jason, followed by Dave.
Yeah, well, I want to say that I hope to see you guys in person tonight.
Oh, good. We'll see you in person. So I get to hug you, and congratulations on the book.
Yeah. As we've been talking, I've just been grabbing things off my shelves that are coming to mind, but I won't show you all of them or any of them. What instead I'd say is I would plug Erica Baum's Instagram account, which I think is this is correct, right? It's Baum Erica. And
how inventive.
It's yeah, and it is very, in terms of what we've been talking about in relation between Erica's work and the New York School, it is really amazing. It's incredible street photography. It's different from the word works, but it's still every day it causes you to look at the world in a completely different way and notice things you would never have noticed before.
Thank you, Jason. We're going to go to Dave. Yes, followed by Gabby. Yes. Every time I see what Erica Baum is doing, I think generally that photography is more inspiring as an art to me than anything else, because it makes me look. And everybody says, and I use my phone to look at the world. And everybody says, why are you using your phone to look at the world? Why don't you just look at the world? And the answer is the aesthetic, man, the aesthetic. If you don't have the aesthetic, you're not going to see that framing is everything. This is what Erica's teaching us. It's great. Rather than photography being degraded by the fact that everybody has a phone, that realization that was just described is enhanced, I think. I don't know if Erica feels that way, but I would impute that. So Dave, followed by Gabby, please.
In my initial comment, I mentioned Leanne Brown's pledge, but I'd like to focus on Mike McGee's pledge, just to point out that I love how it just basically translates, something that we are so familiar with purely phonetically, and into words regardless of the meaning, and it just becomes so absurd, and it raises just the question, can we pledge allegiance to something we might not have fully heard or even fully understood? And more importantly, this reminds me of bad lip reading. If anybody has seen that on YouTube, it's hilarious. Just go to YouTube and look for bad lip reading. The NFL ones, to me, are the best. And to me, you look at that and you think, oh, that's just humor. But now I see it as poetry. And just because something is humor doesn't mean we can't consider it as poetry. It just that's a longer discussion, but that's all.
I love that. I think you're right. I'm going to go back to those. I've seen those, and I really need to think of them as poetry, like like what Mike McGee is doing. Here we are the day after the U.S. election. I planned a neat myth, today's rags. Ugly unified fates, never heard of you. And 10 and 3 colonies or 50 nifty states. Coronation, underground, into mythical, palabricity, and just this for all. Let's go to Gabby, followed by Daphne. Final thought.
Well, first of all, that's my cat Panini, who's now showing her butthole on camera.
Hi.
So, what was I going to say?
Thank you for pointing that out.
Of course, anytime. I love this week. I think these are kind of my people. And my hope, I think, for any kind of first time mod poers is that we've really kind of blown open possibilities for what this kind of work can look like. I mean, we start with 2 radicals that have now become traditional in a sense, but by this point, we really sort of opened up what you can do in a poem. And I think my hope is that it's a liberating possibility rather than a scary, overwhelming one. Not that the field is too big to ever be understood, but rather that one can engage in it in just a really wide variety of ways.
Perfect. Thank you, Gabby. What an inspiration. I think everybody should go out and try some of this stuff, not just find more of it. Daphne, followed by Max.
Yeah. So one thing is we have this, form must fit content. Oh, that's such a modern idea. It's no. I think, I don't know, you go back. I have the Ars Poetica up right now. Horace tells us that the form has to fit the content, not in so many words. It's not a new idea. It's just one that's been radically reshaped and, interpreted.
And occasionally forgotten. That was my Elizabeth Barrett Brown point.
No, definitely. So it's not necessarily new, but it's something that, we're reinterpreting in very exciting ways. And the second final word thought is as to photography, where is poetry? What is poetry? I would say if you find something that you decide may be poetic, so be it. I have a PDF open in another screen of the definition of a field in mathematics. I think that's poetic. If you work with it long enough, you'll find what
You're
you want
in good
there.
company thinking that about field. Thank you, Daphne. Thank you so much. Let's turn to Max, followed by Rosie.
Yeah, I want to start by quoting Jenny Levin, who's posting here in the YouTube. Thank you, Al and all, for opening this up. Loved it all. So it looks like we went a pretty good way towards answering some of Jenny's questions for us.
Great.
And I also, just as a final thought, wanted to quote another comment here in the YouTube from Vijaya Lakshmi. Do we not read words whole like pictures? Which I found a really lovely insight into
that's so smart.
work and into the week 10, some of these sorts of hybrid works that we encountered here in the last weeks of the course.
So interesting. There was that 5-year period where the early modernists of the 20th century wanted to think about all words as written out as pictograms of sorts. And that was an originary gesture, a gesture back. And then that happened again at the late 50s with the so-called ethnopoetics or the deep image movement. And I think it comes back in interesting concrete poetry in recent years. So it's back, and it's a good point. Let's go to Rosie, followed by Amber Rose. Hi, Rosie. How are you? I think, is Rosie able to be heard?
Hi.
Yeah. There you go. Hi, Rosie.
When we were talking about Victorians, I was thinking before taking this course, I would probably think that sonnets are the only and the best form of poetry. But after especially this week and last week and the few weeks before as well, I think like Daphne said, just finding what you think is poetic and breaking what other people think is poetic and just making your own poetry is what's meaningful and intentional.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rosie. That is great. Very gratifying to hear. Amber Rose, followed by Erica Baum.
My final word is circling back to Gabby's plug on their essay on loss writing, and forms of our living on
We
Jacket
seem to
2.
be reading now.
Well, no. Well, actually, it was one of the first, either the first or one of the first pieces that I was assigned to read as a new Jacket 2 editorial fellow. Shout out to you. I didn't actually edit it, but I did read it and was like, yes, we should publish this. But I don't know if I'm supposed to
reveal that.
No, I'm probably not. It's probably, that's
peer reviewed.
Don't tell Julia.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Anyway, but the point is that it's really a fantastic essay, and it is just such a fluid and like lucid read, and it's so generous, but also like curt in a way that we need it to be because it's hard. But it's a really lovely piece, and it made me really excited about working with Jacket 2. So shout out to Gabby, and go read the essay.
Gabby, are you blushing? It's really hard to tell on Zoom.
Thank you, Amber Rose. It means a lot.
Yeah, it's so great. It's great to have everybody here, but at the moment we're praising Gabby. So fabulous that you're part of our conversation all the time. Erica Baum, followed by Allie Castleman.
First of all, I'm looking forward to Lainey's reading tonight, if I can hear it on the Webcast live, or if I can find it recorded later, depending on my timing. And I'm excited about Jason's book, so you have to keep us posted. And I can't wait to read Gabby's essay in Jacket 2. And this is also a shout out to Jacket 2 in general, and to Poem Talk, and to Pen Sound, and to ModPo, and to everything. And one last word about meaning and photography. I think one of the things I've sort of really gotten from paying attention to poetry, especially through ModPo, is this feeling that we generate meaning together. We generate meaning in conversation, and meaning's fluid, and that kind of, it goes both ways, because I think as a practitioner, you can feel freer to experiment and let the meaning unfold, and not worry in advance. What am I doing? What am I trying to say? So, I'll leave it.
Erica Baum, snaps for Erica Baum. Thank you for your generous time with us today, and in the last couple of days on the forums. It's great. Just such a nice thing to have you as a friend of this project, and as a plain friend. Not a plain friend, a fabulous friend, but plain old friend. No, I don't know. Anyway, let's go to Allie, followed by Lainey on Lainey Brown Day.
I think one of the things I love so much about Dog Ear, and that project in general, and just aleatory poetry, because I definitely see it in that category, is like, it's totally oracular quality. And what Erica just said, it's like, as a reader, knowing that, you know, a poem has been created just by a kind of happenstance, essentially. As a reader, like, you can just kind of have that, like, oh my God, what are these words in combination trying to tell us? But the writer also has that experience. The artist has that experience too. And I just think that that's so, back to what Gabby said, like, it's just motivating to like create that experience for others and for yourself. It's just a really engaging form of play. So I would encourage people to just, have fun with the canvas.
Love it. Thank you, Allie. Lainey Brown on Lainey Brown Day. Your final thoughts?
I want to praise Erica Baum more, because we didn't really talk about card catalog. So I just want to say how much I love that. And where else can you find Cleopatra, Apparition, and Outer Space? And so much space around it to imagine the ocean or the infiniteness of each.
Love it. Thank you so much. I'm going to cede my time to Yacht Blanc. This is the day after the election in the United States of America. We have had webcasts. Gabby will remember and others will remember the saddest webcast of all, which was literally the Wednesday after the Tuesday in 2016's election. We were all a little surprised. And you should go back into the archives and watch us that day. It was really, really something. Today is a little different, but nonetheless, when we think about the immediacy with which an opposition party is going to, in an almost parliamentary way, going to try to drag down a presidency in its next 2 years, perhaps its last 2 years, you think about what the president will say and do. What the president will say and do. So we're going to go out. We're going to say goodbye for the week. We're going to go out listening to Jaap Blanc. We will end the webcast right after Jaap finishes. And I'm just going to say I hope everybody will come to the Final Words webcast so that everybody in the community has a chance for a final word. And we're going to urge you to call us because we didn't get calls today. So we want you to call us on Monday so that we can hear from you for final words. And now, we'll see you at 6 p.m. tonight, either in person here or through the live stream for the continuation of Lainey Brown Day. But now let's turn to what the president will say and do.
Thank you. I was at this conference seance in CalArts in Los Angeles, and
seance.
I met this writer, Madeline Gins, and I would like to present a short meditation on the title of one of her books. What the President Will Say and Do. 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 What the President will say do. What the President will send. 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 What the President will
Bye, everybody. We'll see you Monday.